Mistletoe Harmonies. A Mistletoe Kisses romance. Written by Susanne Ash. Chapter 1. Ella. The familiar scent of salty air hits me as I step out of Myrtle Beach International Airport, my guitar case banging against my leg. I take a deep breath, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. It's been 2 years since I left Palmar Island, chasing my dreams in New York City. Now I'm back, and I'm not sure if I should feel relieved or defeated. I scan the parking lot, searching for a familiar face among the small crowd of people waiting for arrivals. That's when I hear her. Ella. My sister Jenna's voice cuts through the chatter. She's waving frantically from her beat-up Jeep, a big smile plastered on her face. I smile back and make my way toward her, dragging my suitcase behind me. Hey, sis, I call out. Long time no see. Jenna practically leaps out of the Jeep and engulfs me in a tight hug. Oh my God, I've missed you so much. She pulls back, holding me at arm's length to get a good look at me. How was your flight? I shrug, trying to keep my tone light. Oh, you know, the usual. Cramped seats, crying babies, questionable snacks. She laughs, the sound as warm and familiar as the sea breeze. Well, welcome back to the Carolinas. Here, let me help you with that. She grabs my suitcase and hoists it into the back of the Jeep with surprising ease. As we settle into the car and pull out of the airport parking lot, I notice a slight tension in Jenna's shoulders, a nervousness in her movements that wasn't there before. I brush it off, figuring she's probably anxious about having me back home after so long. We merge onto Highway 17, heading south toward Palmar Island. The familiar landscape rolls by, a mix of touristy shops, seafood restaurants, and glimpses of marshland between buildings. So, Jenna says, her eyes fixed on the road, how's the big city treating you? Made it to Radio City Music Hall yet? I force a laugh, hoping it doesn't sound as hollow as it feels. Not quite. But hey, I've played in some really great dive bars. That's something, right? Jenna's trying to be supportive, but I can hear the concern in her voice. Yeah, it's something, I mutter, staring out the window. We pass through Surfside Beach and then Malls Inlet, each mile bringing us closer to home. We drive in silence for a while, the only sound the old Jeep's engine and the occasional squawk of a seagull. I'm lost in thoughts of the past 2 years, the excitement of moving to the city, the thrill of my first gig, the crushing disappointment of rejection after rejection. I'd been so sure I was going to make it big, that I'd come back to Palmar Island a star. Instead, here I am, tail between my legs, feeling like a failure. So, I say, desperate to change the subject, anything new and exciting happening on our sleepy little island? Jenna's grip on the steering wheel tightens, her knuckles turning white. Actually, she says, her voice unnaturally high, there is something I need to tell you. The seriousness in her tone makes me turn to face her. What's up? She takes a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. I'm kind of seeing someone. That's great. I'm genuinely happy for her. At least one of us has some good news. Who's the lucky guy? Jenna bites her lip, still not meeting my eyes. It's Chandler. The name hits me like a punch to the gut. Chandler? I repeat, sure I must have heard wrong. As in my ex-boyfriend Chandler? She nods, her face a mixture of guilt and anxiety. I know it's weird, but it just sort of happened. We bumped into each other at Mary's Diner a few months ago, got to talking, and I struggle to process this information. Chandler and I had dated for 2 years before I left for New York. We'd tried long distance for a while but eventually decided to call it quits. I never imagined he'd end up with my sister. Ella? Please say something, Jenna pleads, finally glancing at me. I force myself to take a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't know what to say. How long has this been going on? About 4 months, she admits. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I didn't know how. 4 months. My mind is reeling. And you're just telling me now? Jenna sighs, her shoulders slumping. I'm sorry. I know I should have said something. It's just, I really like him, Ella. And he likes me too. I close my eyes, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. Hurt, betrayal, and a twinge of jealousy swirl in my chest. But underneath it all, there's a small part of me that wants my sister to be happy. After all, Chandler and I are over. Have been for a while. It's fine, I say, opening my eyes. You don't need my permission. I'm happy for you. Really? Jenna sounds hopeful, finally looking at me.
Yeah.
I lie, plastering on a smile. It's been years. We've both moved on. Jenna relaxes a bit, but then tenses up again. There's one more thing. What now? Are you engaged? I joke weakly. No, nothing like that, she says quickly. It's just that Chandler will be at a lot of the family functions this holiday season. I hope that won't be too awkward for you. Great. Just great. Not only is my sister dating my ex, but I'll have to watch them being all lovey-dovey during what's supposed to be a relaxing holiday break. I can already imagine the pitying looks from relatives, the whispered conversations about poor Ella, who couldn't make it in the big city and lost her boyfriend to her sister. It'll be fine, I say, my fake smile still in place. Totally fine. We lapse into silence as we cross the bridge onto Palmar Island. I watch as we pass by familiar landmarks, the old lighthouse, the pier where I had my first kiss, the music store where I bought my first guitar. Each sight brings a flood of memories, both sweet and bitter. Finally, we pull up to our childhood home, a cozy beach house with faded blue shutters and a wraparound porch. Mom's already waiting at the door, practically bouncing with excitement. My baby's home, she cries, rushing down the steps to hug me as soon as I step out of the Jeep. Hi, Mom, I say, breathing in her familiar scent of vanilla and cinnamon. Despite everything, I feel a warmth spread through me at her embrace. Oh, let me look at you, she says, holding me at arm's length. Her eyes narrow as she takes me in. New York hasn't been feeding you enough. Come on in, I've got a pot roast in the oven. As I follow her inside, lugging my suitcase behind me, I feel overwhelmed. The living room still has the same worn, comfortable furniture. Family photos line the walls, chronicling years of memories. But now, those memories feel tainted by the knowledge of Jenna and Chandler's relationship. I'm gonna unpack, I tell Mom, heading up to my old room. Once inside, I close the door and lean against it, letting out a long breath. The room is exactly as I left it, posters of my favorite bands on the walls, my old guitar in the corner, photos of friends and family scattered around. My eyes land on a picture of Chandler and me at the beach, taken before I left for New York. We look so happy, so in love. I resist the urge to turn it face down. I flop onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. How am I going to get through this holiday season? As I lie there, trying to come up with a game plan for surviving the holidays, one thought keeps circling in my mind: I need a miracle. Or maybe just a really good fake boyfriend. I run my fingers over my old guitar, remembering the countless hours I spent practicing, dreaming of the day I'd make it big. I sigh and turn my attention to the suitcase. It holds everything I cared to bring back with me. Each item I unpack feels like a reminder of my failure in New York. The set list from my first gig at a tiny coffee shop. The business card of a record producer who never called back. The lucky pick I always used for auditions, fat lot of good that did me. I sink back onto the bed, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions. This room used to be my sanctuary, my launching pad for big dreams. Now it feels like a time capsule of a girl who no longer exists. My eyes land on a framed photo on the bookshelf. It's me and Dylan Thorne at our high school graduation, grinning like idiots with our arms around each other. God, we were so young, so full of hope. I wonder what Dylan's up to now. Probably living his best life, unlike some of us. The walls of my room suddenly feel suffocating. I need air. I need to clear my head before I drown in self-pity and regret. Grabbing my coat, I head downstairs. Mom's in the kitchen, the smell of pot roast filling the air. I'm going for a walk, I say. I won't be long. Mom scans my face for a second and nods. Dinner will be ready in about an hour. The crisp ocean air hits me as I step outside, clearing some of the fog from my mind. I make my way down to the shore, the sound of the waves a soothing rhythm. The beach is mostly empty this time of year, just a few locals out for an evening stroll. I walk along the water's edge, watching the surf. It grounds me, reminding me of countless summer days spent here. I was so eager to leave this place, to prove myself. Now, I'm not sure where I belong. Lost in thought, I don't notice the figure jogging toward me until it's too late. We collide, both of us stumbling back with surprised yelps. "I'm so sorry," I say, mortified. "I wasn't watching where I was going." "Ella," a familiar voice asks. "Ella Langford?" I look up, my eyes widening in recognition. "Dylan?" He grins, that same boyish smile I remember from high school. "The one and only. I heard you were back in town." I can't help smiling back. "Yeah, just got in today." "How've you been?" "Can't complain," he shrugs. "Took over the music store from my dad last year. Business is pretty good." "That's great," I say, genuinely happy for him. "I always loved that store." "I remember." Dylan chuckles. "You used to come in almost every day after school, just to strum that old Martin guitar." The memory makes me laugh. God, I was obsessed with that thing. "Your dad probably thought I was casing the joint." "Nah. He loved it. Said you were the only kid who truly appreciated the instruments." Dylan's eyes soften with nostalgia. "Remember that time we tried to start a band?" I groan, covering my face. "Don't remind me. We were terrible." "Hey, speak for yourself," he teases. "I'll have you know I've gotten much better since then." We fall into an easy rhythm, walking side by side as we reminisce about our childhood adventures. For a moment, I forget about all my worries, New York, Chandler, Jenna. It's just me and Dylan, like old times. But reality crashes back in when he asks, "So, how long are you in town for?" "For the holidays," I say, hedging my bets. I have no idea what I want to do next. Though to be honest, I'm already dreading it. Dylan raises an eyebrow. "Trouble in paradise?" "You could say that," I sigh. Turns out my sister is dating my ex-boyfriend, and now I have to watch them be all lovey-dovey at every family event. Dylan winces. "Ouch. That's rough." "Yeah," I agree, kicking at a shell. I don't know how I'm going to get through it. We walk in silence for a moment, when I remember the random thought that had popped into my head earlier. "Hey, Dylan? My heart is racing. Can I ask you a huge favor?" He looks at me warily. "Depends on the favor." I take a deep breath. "Would you pretend to be my boyfriend for the holidays?" Dylan's eyes widen in surprise. "What?" I know it's crazy, I say, the words tumbling out. But I can't stand the thought of being the pathetic single girl watching her ex with her sister. It would just be for family events. "I'll owe you big time." Dylan runs a hand through his hair, looking conflicted. "I don't know." "Please?" I give him my best puppy dog eyes, the ones that always worked when we were kids. "For old time's sake?" A small smile tugs at his lips. "You're going to be the death of me, Langford." "Fine, I'll do it." Relief washes over me. "Really?" "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you." I throw my arms around him in a hug. As I pull back, I see something flicker in Dylan's eyes, but it's gone before I can identify it. "We should probably set some ground rules," he says, his tone businesslike. I nod, trying to ignore the butterflies in my stomach. "Right. Good idea." We start walking again, this time with purpose. "Okay, first rule," Dylan says. "No kissing on the lips. Cheek kisses are okay, if absolutely necessary." Agreed. Hand-holding is fine, and maybe the occasional arm around the shoulder? I ask. "That works," Dylan nods. "What about our backstory? How did we get together?" I think for a moment. How about we reconnected when I came back for a visit last summer? We started talking online after that, and things developed. That could work, Dylan says. It's close enough to the truth that we won't have to remember too many lies. We spend the next few minutes ironing out the details of our fake relationship, deciding on everything from our first date to our song. I feel a mix of relief and nervousness. This might actually work. Or it could blow up spectacularly in my face. Thanks again for doing this, Dylan, I say as we make our way back to the beach access across the road from my parents' house. You're a real lifesaver. What are friends for? Just try not to fall in love with me for real, okay? He winks, and I roll my eyes. In your dreams, Thorne, I retort, ignoring the little voice in my head that whispers, too late.
Chapter 2. Dylan. The bell above the door jingles as I push into the roasted bean. The warm aroma of freshly brewed coffee and cinnamon rolls envelopes me, but I barely notice it. My mind is still reeling from yesterday's encounter with Ella. The usual, Dylan? Vanessa, the barista, calls out with a smile. This month, her hair is a festive green instead of the bright blue she usually dons. I nod absently, fumbling for my wallet. Yeah, thanks. And, whatever Hope's having when she gets here. You got it. I grunt in acknowledgement and make my way to our usual corner table. Sinking into the worn leather armchair, I run a hand through my hair, trying to sort through the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Ella's back. After 2 years, she's finally home. And in less than 5 minutes of conversation, I managed to agree to be her fake boyfriend. What in the world was I thinking? The sound of the door opening snaps me out of my reverie. Hope breezes in, her hair windblown and cheeks flushed from the cold. She spots me and waves, then heads to the counter to grab our drinks. Sorry I'm late, she says, sliding into the chair opposite me. Parent-teacher conferences ran over. One mom seemed to think her precious angel C- in English was somehow my fault. I force a chuckle. Sounds thrilling. Hope narrows her eyes, studying me over the rim of her mug. Okay, spill. What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost. I take a deep breath. Ella's back. Hope's eyebrows shoot up. Ella Langford? Your high school crush Ella? The one who broke your heart and moved to New York, Ella? She didn't break my heart, I mutter, though we both know it's a lie. But yeah, that Ella. Wow. Hope leans back in her chair. How long is she in town for? A few weeks, I say, fidgeting with my coffee cup. But, there's more. Hope leans forward, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. More? Do tell. I take a long sip of my coffee, stalling. I may have agreed to pretend to be her boyfriend for the holidays. For a moment, Hope just stares at me, mouth agape. Then she bursts out laughing. I'm sorry, she gasps between giggles, but are you insane? I groan, slumping in my chair. Probably. Hope's laughter subsides, replaced by concern. Dylan, sweetie, what were you thinking? You've been in love with this girl since we were kids. How are you going to pretend to be her boyfriend without getting hurt? I can handle it, I say, even as doubt gnaws at me. It's just for a few weeks. And she really needs the help. Her sister is dating her ex-boyfriend, and... Wait, what? Hope interrupts. Her sister is dating Chandler? That's messed up. I nod. Yeah, and apparently they're going to be at all the family events. Ella doesn't want to face them alone. Hope's expression softens. Okay, I get why she asked. But Dylan, you have to know this is a bad idea. You're setting yourself up for heartbreak. It's not like that. We're just friends. This is me helping out an old friend. If I keep saying it, I might actually start believing it. Hope gives me a look that says she's not buying it. I've known you since we were in diapers. You've been carrying a torch for Ella Langford for as long as I can remember. Are you really telling me those feelings are gone? I sigh, running a hand over my face. No. They're not gone. But I can keep them in check. This isn't about me, it's about helping Ella. And what happens when the holidays are over and she goes back to New York? Hope asks gently. Can you handle watching her leave again? The question hits me like a punch to the gut. Can I? The memory of watching Ella drive away 2 years ago, of the hollow ache in my chest for months afterward, is still painfully fresh. I have to, I say. I can't let her face this alone. You didn't see her yesterday, Hope. She looked so lost, so hurt. If I can help make this holiday season easier for her, I have to try. Hope reaches across the table, squeezing my hand. You've always been too nice for your own good, you know that? I manage a weak smile. It's part of my charm. She snorts. It's part of what's going to get you hurt. Her expression turns serious. But if you're really going to do this, we need to make sure you're prepared. Have you thought about how you're going to pull this off? I blink, realizing I haven't really thought beyond agreeing to Ella's plan. Not really. We came up with a basic backstory, but that's about it. Hope rolls her eyes. Amateurs. Okay, let's think this through. You'll need to act like a couple in public, right? Have you discussed PDA? I feel my cheeks heat up. We, agreed on no kissing on the lips. Cheek kisses and hand-holding are okay. Hope nods. That's a start. But it's more than just physical stuff. You need to know things about each other. Favorite foods, allergies, quirks. You need inside jokes, pet names, all that couple-wise stuff. My head spins at the list. Right. I didn't think about all that. Hope leans forward, her teacher mode clearly activated. Okay, here's what you do. Set up a date night with Ella. Spend an evening just talking, getting to know each other again. Share stories, preferences, fears. The more you know, the more convincing you'll be. I nod, mentally taking notes. That's a good idea. What else? Practice your physical affection, Hope says. I know it might be awkward, but you need to be comfortable touching each other casually. Hold hands while you walk. Put your arm around her shoulders. The more natural it feels, the more believable it will be. My heart races at the thought of holding Ella's hand, of having her tucked against my side. Right. Anything else? Hope thinks for a moment. Oh, and make sure you have some photos together. Couples take tons of pictures. Maybe stage a little photo shoot, get some good shots for your phones and social media. I pull out my phone, actually jotting down notes now. Photos, got it. This is really helpful, Hope. Thanks. She smiles, but there's still worry in her eyes. Just be careful, okay? I really don't want to see you get hurt. I reach across the table, squeezing her hand. I'll be fine. It's just acting, right? And hey, maybe this will finally give me the closure I need. Hope doesn't look convinced, but she nods. Maybe. I'm here if you need to talk. Or cry. Or drink away your sorrows. I laugh, feeling some of the tension ease. Thanks. I might take you up on that. We finish our coffee and head our separate ways. Walking back to the music store, my mind is racing with plans. A date night to get reacquainted. A photo shoot on the beach. I even start mentally compiling a list of things I remember about Ella from our childhood, her favorite color, her go-to comfort food, her irrational fear of pelicans. For the first time since agreeing to this crazy scheme, I feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe this could work. And who knows? Maybe by the end of it, I'll finally be able to move on from Ella Langford. Or maybe, a small voice whispers in the back of my mind, she'll finally see me as more than her childhood friend. I take a deep breath, staring at the familiar blue shutters of the Langford family home. My palms are sweaty, and I wipe them on my jeans before reaching for the doorbell. This is it. Our first public appearance as a couple. The door swings open, revealing Ella. She looks stunning in an emerald green sweater that brings out the warmth in her eyes. For a moment, I forget how to breathe. "Hey, you," she says, a bit too loudly. Then she leans in and whispers, "Ready for this?" I nod, putting on my best boyfriend smile. Ready as I'll ever be. Ella takes my hand, intertwining our fingers, and leads me inside. The house smells like cinnamon and roast turkey, and I'm hit with a wave of nostalgia. How many times did I come over for dinner as a kid, wishing I was more than just Ella's friend? "Mom, Dad," Ella calls out, "Dylan's here." Mrs. Langford emerges from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. "Dylan. It's so good to see you." She engulfs me in a warm hug. We were all so excited when Ella told us you two had gotten together. I hug her back, hoping she can't feel how fast my heart is racing. "It's great to see you too, Mrs. Langford. Thanks for having me over." "Oh, please, call me Sarah," she insists. "Your family now." If only she knew how much I wish that were true. Mr. Langford appears from the living room, extending a hand. "Good to see you, son. Glad you could join us." I shake his hand firmly. "Wouldn't miss it, sir." Ella squeezes my hand, and I look down to see her smiling up at me. It's so convincing that for a second, I almost believe it's real. "Come on," she says, tugging me toward the living room. "Let's say hi to everyone else." As we enter, I spot Jenna sitting on the couch next to Chandler. He's as tall as ever, with perfectly styled hair and the kind of tan you only get from regular trips to the beach. Though we don't know each other well, I've never liked the guy. Jenna jumps up when she sees us. "Dylan. I can't believe it's really you. Look at you, all grown up and handsome." I laugh, trying to ease the tension I feel building in my chest. "Thanks, Jenna. You look great too." Chandler stands, extending a hand. "Hey, man, good to see you." I shake his hand, perhaps a bit too firmly. "Likewise." Ella's arm snakes around my waist, and I instinctively pull her closer. "Chandler and I used to date," she says, her voice light but with an undercurrent of tension. "But that was ages ago. Ancient history, right?" Chandler nods, looking a bit uncomfortable. "Right, ancient history." An awkward silence falls over the room. I rack my brain for something to say, anything to break the tension. "Hey, Elle," I say, the old nickname slipping out naturally. "Remember that time we tried to sneak into the seafood festival dressed as a giant crab?" Ella bursts out laughing, the sound genuine and bright. "Oh my God, I can't believe you remember that. We were, what, 14? 13, I correct her, grinning. "And if I recall correctly, it was your brilliant idea." She playfully swats my arm. "Hey, it would have worked if you hadn't tripped over the claws." Just like that, the tension in the room eases. We all settle onto the couches, and I find myself sharing more stories from our childhood, embellishing here and there to make our relationship seem more romantic. And then Ella decided the best way to get the seagull to leave was to offer it her ice cream cone, I say, barely containing my laughter. Ella hides her face in my shoulder, her body shaking with giggles. "Stop, you're making me sound like an idiot." I press a kiss to the top of her head without thinking. "A cute idiot." She looks up at me, her eyes sparkling, and for a moment, I forget anyone else is in the room. It's just us, lost in a shared memory and the warmth of each other's presence. The spell is broken by Mrs. Langford calling us to dinner. As we make our way to the dining room, Ella keeps her hand in mine, and I have to remind myself that this isn't real. Dinner is a lively affair, with conversation flowing easily. I relax, falling into the familiar rhythm of the Langford family dynamics. It's almost like old times, except now I'm sitting next to Ella, our chairs just a little too close, our hands brushing, accidentally, as we reach for the salt. It's during dessert that Mrs. Langford drops the bomb. "So, Dylan," she says, passing me a slice of apple pie, "tell us how you and Ella got together." I mean, you've known each other forever, but what made you finally take the plunge? I freeze, my fork halfway to my mouth. We hadn't prepared for this. I look at Ella, panic rising in my chest, but she just smiles encouragingly. Well, I start, buying time as I scramble for a believable story. I guess it was always there, you know? We were friends for so long, but there was something more simmering under the surface. I take a deep breath, deciding to stick as close to the truth as possible. When Ella came back to visit last summer, something clicked. We spent a lot of time together, reminiscing about old times, and I realized that what I felt for her was more than just friendship. Ella jumps in, her hand finding mine under the table. We started talking more after I went back to New York. Late-night phone calls, silly text messages. And then one day, Dylan just blurted out that he had feelings for me. I laugh, playing along. Not my smoothest moment, I'll admit. But hey, it worked, didn't it? Ella looks at me, her eyes soft. Yes, it did. For a moment, I let myself believe it's true. That this isn't just an act, that Ella really does feel something for me. The way she's looking at me, it's so convincing that my heart aches with the possibility of it. Mrs. Langford clasps her hands together, beaming. Oh, that's wonderful. I always thought you two would make a lovely couple. The rest of the evening passes in a blur of more stories and laughter. When it's time to leave, Ella walks me out to my car, our hands still intertwined. As we reach the driveway, hidden from view of the house, Ella lets out a long breath. Phew. I think we pulled it off. You were amazing in there, Dylan. Thank you so much for doing this. I force a smile, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in my chest. Anytime, Elle. That's what friends are for, right? She hugs me tightly, and I allow myself to hold her for just a moment longer than necessary. When she pulls back, there's something in her eyes I can't quite read. Good night, Dylan, she says softly. Drive safe. Good night, Ella. As I drive home, the events of the evening replay in my mind. The easy laughter, the casual touches, the way Ella looked at me when I told the story of how we got together. It felt so real, so right. And that was a problem. Because now, sitting alone in my car with the memory of Ella's warmth still lingering, I realize just how much I wish it were real. How much I want the story we told to be true. I grip the steering wheel tighter, forcing myself to focus on the road and not on the ache in my chest. This was supposed to help me get over Ella, to finally move on. Instead, I'm falling even deeper.
Chapter 3. Ella. Palmar Island's Christmas market is bustling with activity when Dylan and I make our way through the crowd. Twinkling lights adorn every stall and food stand, and the giant Christmas tree in the center stands dark, waiting for its moment to shine. The air is crisp with a hint of salt, and the excitement is palpable. I can't believe how many people are here, I say, stepping closer to Dylan as we navigate through the throng. He chuckles, his arm naturally finding its way around my waist. Small town, remember? The tree lighting is like our Super Bowl. I laugh, trying to ignore the warmth that spreads through me at his touch. It's just for show, I remind myself. We're playing a part. Ella. Dylan, a voice calls out. We turn to see Mrs. Peterson, my old music teacher, waving frantically at us. Come join us for caroling. Dylan looks at me, eyebrows raised in question. I shrug, grinning. Why not? For old time's sake? We make our way over to the group of carolers gathering near the tree. Mrs. Peterson beams at us, handing out song sheets. Oh, I'm so glad you two could make it. And I hear congratulations are in order. I feel my cheeks heat up, but Dylan just smiles, pulling me closer. Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. We're very happy. As the group starts to sing Deck the Halls, I'm transported back to high school choir practices. Dylan and I used to stand next to each other then, too. His voice, a warm tenor, blends perfectly with my alto, just like it always has. We move through several carols, our voices rising and falling in harmony. There's something magical about it, the music, the lights, the sense of community. For the first time since I've been back, I feel truly at home. As we finish Silent Night, I glance up at Dylan. He's looking out at the crowd, a soft smile on his face, and my breath catches. The golden glow of the Christmas lights illuminates his profile, and for a moment, I forget we're pretending. The mayor steps up to the podium then, calling for everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. Let the countdown begin. The crowd joins in, voices rising in excitement. 10. 9. 8. Dylan's arm tightens around me. Make a wish, Elle, he whispers. 3. 2. 1. The tree bursts into life, thousands of lights twinkling against the night sky. A collective gasp goes up from the crowd, followed by cheers and applause. It's beautiful, magical even, but I find my eyes drawn not to the tree, but to Dylan's face. The joy and wonder I see there make my heart skip a beat. As the crowd begins to disperse, we start to make our way back through the square. That's when I spot Miss Doris, our elderly neighbor, struggling with a box of decorations and unsold baked goods from her Christmas market booth.
Oh no.
I murmur, Miss Doris looks like she needs help. Before I can say anything else, Dylan is already moving toward her. Miss Doris, he calls out, can we give you a hand with those? The old woman looks up, relief washing over her face. Oh, Dylan, dear. That would be wonderful. These old bones aren't what they used to be. I follow Dylan, watching as he easily lifts the heavy box. Where are we taking these, Miss Doris? To my car, if you don't mind. It's just in the parking lot over there, she says, pointing. I'm afraid packing up took longer than I expected. No problem at all, Dylan says, adjusting his grip on the box. Ella and I are happy to help, aren't we, Elle? I nod, smiling at Miss Doris. Of course. How was the bake sale this year? As we walk to her car, Miss Doris chatters happily about the day's sales and the compliments she received on her famous gingerbread cookies. Dylan loads the box into her trunk while I help her gather the smaller items she's carrying. You two make such a lovely couple, Miss Doris says, startling me as I arrange some tinsel in the back seat. I always hoped you'd end up together. I feel my cheeks heat up, but Dylan just laughs, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Sometimes the best things in life are worth waiting for, he says, pressing a kiss to my temple. My heart races at the gesture, and I have to remind myself again that this is all for show. But it's getting harder and harder to remember that. As we finish up, Miss Doris insists on rewarding us with hot cocoa. It's my special recipe, she says with a wink. Been in the family for generations. I have some left over from the market. She pours us each a cup from a large thermos, and we settle onto a nearby bench. The square has quieted down now, just a few people milling about, admiring the lights. This is amazing, I say after taking a sip. I'd forgotten how good Miss Doris's cocoa is. Dylan nods in agreement. Remember that Christmas when we were kids? You got that awful flu, and Miss Doris brought over a thermos of this cocoa every day for a week. I laugh at the memory. I do. I think it was the only thing that got me through it. Well, that and you coming over every day to keep me company. Hey, what are friends for? Dylan says softly. There's something in his eyes, something warm and tender that makes my breath catch. We sit in comfortable silence for a while, sipping our cocoa and watching the twinkling lights. It's nice, I realize. More than nice. It feels right, sitting here with Dylan, sharing memories and quiet moments. You know, I say finally, I'm really glad you agreed to do this, Dylan. I don't think I could have faced all this alone. He turns to look at me, his expression serious. You're never alone, Elle. Not as long as I'm around. I could have used you in New York, I say, thinking about the lackluster attendance at my gigs. My own personal cheerleader would have come in handy when I made my way back to the tiny room I rented. I'm guessing things didn't go as planned, he asks gently. Not exactly. Before I realize what I'm doing, I'm telling him about my failed attempt to make it in the music business. The doubts that keep creeping in. I don't think I have what it takes to be a professional performer. Ella Langford, if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that you were born to sing. Never doubt that, he says. The sincerity in his voice, the warmth in his eyes, it's almost too much. I find myself leaning toward him, drawn in by something I can't quite name. The moment is broken by the town clock chiming 9. I pull back, suddenly aware of how close we were. We should probably head back, Dylan says, his voice a little rougher than usual. It's getting late. I nod, standing up perhaps a bit too quickly. Right. We should go. As we walk back to my house, Dylan's hand finds mine, our fingers intertwining naturally. It's a small gesture, one we've done 100 times since this charade began. But tonight, it feels different. Everything feels different. I sneak a glance at Dylan as we walk, taking in his profile, the way he smiles and nods at people we pass. He's always been there, I realize. Through every up and down, every triumph and heartbreak. How had I never noticed before how wonderful he is? As we reach my front porch, I find myself reluctant to let go of his hand. Thanks for tonight, I say softly. It was really nice. Dylan smiles, and my heart does a little flip. Anytime, Elle. Sweet dreams. What about this? Dylan holds up a garish Christmas sweater adorned with blinking lights and a 3D reindeer nose. Perfect for your dad, right? I burst out laughing, nearly dropping the stack of books I'm carrying. Definitely not. He'd never forgive me. We're at one of the many small gift boutiques that line Main Street. The place is decked out in full holiday splendor, with tinsel and ornaments hanging from every available surface. Christmas music plays softly in the background, punctuated by the occasional beep of a cash register. Come on, Dylan says, grinning as he puts the sweater back. It would be hilarious. Maybe for about 5 seconds, I reply, shaking my head. Then I'd have to live with the consequences for the rest of my life. Dylan chuckles, moving on to a display of scarves. Fair enough. So, what are you thinking for your mom? I hold up the stack of books I picked up at the Book Nook. I found a few new releases by her favorite authors. I figured I'd pair them with some of that fancy tea she likes. Good call, Dylan nods approvingly. See? You've got this gift-giving thing down. I don't know why you were so worried. I sigh, shifting the books in my arms. I guess I just want everything to be perfect this year. After being away for so long, and then coming back, not quite as successful as I'd hoped. Dylan's expression softens. He reaches out, squeezing my shoulder gently. Hey, you're here. That's what matters to them. Trust me, your family is just happy to have you home. I'm about to respond when a familiar voice cuts through the store's ambient noise. Ella? Dylan? My stomach drops as I turn to see Chandler walking toward us, a shopping basket swinging from his arm. He looks annoyingly perfect, as always, with his artfully tousled hair and designer coat. Chandler. My voice is only slightly strained. Fancy running into you here. Dylan's arm slides around my waist, a gesture that's becoming almost second nature. I lean into him, grateful for the support. Hey, man, Dylan says, his tone friendly. Doing some last-minute shopping? Chandler nods, his eyes flicking between us. Picking up a few things for the family. How about you two? Same here, I say, holding up my stack of books. You know how Mom loves her mystery novels. An awkward silence falls over us. I rack my brain for something to say, anything to break the tension. Ella tells me you're quite the surfer, Dylan says, coming to my rescue again. Any good spots around here for a beginner? I've always wanted to learn. Chandler's face lights up at the mention of his favorite hobby. Oh man, there are some great beaches just south of the island. I'd be happy to show you sometime. Maybe we could all go together? I feel Dylan's arm tighten slightly around me. That sounds great, he says smoothly. We'll have to plan something after the holidays. Chandler nods, seeming relieved at the shift in conversation. Speaking of which, are you two free for New Year's Eve? Jenna and I are throwing a party at my place. Nothing too crazy, just a few friends, some good food and drinks. We'd love to have you there. I freeze, panic rising in my chest. New Year's Eve? That's a week away. Can we really keep this charade going that long? Before I can stammer out an excuse, Dylan jumps in. That sounds fantastic, he says, flashing his most charming smile. We'd love to come, right, babe? He looks down at me, his eyes conveying a silent message, trust me. I swallow hard and nod.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wouldn't miss it. Chandler beams. Great. I'll text you the details. It'll be just like old times, huh, Ella? I force a laugh, hoping it doesn't sound as hollow as it feels.
Yeah.
Just like old times. After a few more minutes of small talk, Chandler excuses himself to finish his shopping. As soon as he's out of earshot, I turn to Dylan, my eyes wide with panic. What are we going to do? I struggle to keep my voice low. New Year's Eve is a whole week away. How are we supposed to keep this up for that long? Dylan guides me to a quiet corner of the store, his hands resting on my shoulders. Hey, calm down. It's going to be okay. We've been doing great so far, right? I take a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I guess. But a party? With all our old friends? That's a whole different level of scrutiny. We can handle it, Dylan says, his voice calm and reassuring. We know each other better than anyone, Elle. We've got years of inside jokes and shared memories to draw from. It's not like we're complete strangers trying to fake a relationship. He has a point. If I had to pretend to be in love with someone, Dylan is probably the easiest choice. We have so much history together, so much genuine affection. Sometimes it hardly feels like pretending at all. I don't know, Dylan, I say, my voice small. What if we slip up? What if someone figures it out? Dylan's hands move from my shoulders to cup my face gently. The gesture is so tender, so intimate, that for a moment I forget how to breathe. Ella, look at me, he says softly. I meet his eyes, finding nothing but warmth and sincerity there. We're not going to slip up. And even if we did, so what? It's not the end of the world. The important thing is that we're in this together. I've got your back, always. Okay? I nod, feeling some of the tension leave my body. Okay. Dylan smiles, and I feel a flutter in my stomach that has nothing to do with anxiety. Good. Now, let's finish up this shopping and grab some lunch. I'm starving. We make our way to the checkout, and I keep glancing at Dylan. The way he effortlessly charmed Chandler, how quickly he jumped in to accept the party invitation, the gentle way he calmed my fears. It's all so natural, so genuine. I find myself wondering if this is really just an act for Dylan. Or could there be something more behind those warm brown eyes and reassuring smiles? As we leave the store, our hands intertwined, I can't shake the feeling that this fake relationship is becoming dangerously real. And the scariest part? I'm not sure I want it to stop.
Chapter 4. Dylan. I strum my guitar, my mind wandering as I sit behind the counter at Thorne's Music. The store is quiet, just a few browsers flipping through sheet music or testing out instruments. I'm barely keeping an eye on them. My thoughts, as they so often do these days, are centered on Ella. She's been different since she got back. Quieter, more reserved. The spark that always lit up her eyes when she talked about music seems dimmed somehow. I wonder if her struggles in New York have shaken her confidence more than she's letting on. A flash of inspiration strikes. What if I could help her rediscover her love for music? Show her that her talent is still there, just waiting to be unleashed? I set my guitar aside and grab a notepad, scribbling down ideas. A private concert for her family? No, too intimate. An open mic night at the Roasted Bean? Too similar to the gigs she played in New York. It might overwhelm her. Then it hits me, the town's annual Christmas concert. It's perfect. A familiar setting, a supportive audience, and just the right amount of pressure. But how to get her involved without raising suspicion? A duet. My heart races at the thought. Ella and I used to sing together all the time in high school. Our voices always blended perfectly. If I could convince her to perform with me, share her voice, that might be exactly what she needs to regain her footing. I grab my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I find the number for Mrs. Abernathy, the concert organizer. My fingers hesitate over the call button for just a moment before I take a deep breath and press it. Hello, Mrs. Abernathy? It's Dylan Thorne. I had an idea for the Christmas concert I wanted to run by you. 20 minutes later, I hang up with a grin on my face. We're in. Now comes the hard part, choosing the perfect song and keeping it a surprise from Ella. I spend the rest of the afternoon combing through sheet music, humming snippets of songs under my breath. It needs to be something that showcases Ella's range, something that will remind her how incredible her voice is. But it also needs to be a song that works as a duet, something that highlights our chemistry. Finally, I find it. The Prayer, by Andrea Bocelli and Celine Dion. It's challenging enough to be impressive, but not so difficult that we can't master it in the time we have. Plus, the lyrics about guidance and dreams. It's perfect. I make a copy, then hide the original back in the stack. Can't risk Ella stumbling upon it if she comes into the store. That evening, I call Hope. I need someone to practice with, and she's the only one I trust not to spill the beans to Ella. I let out a sigh of relief when she agrees to meet me at the store after we close. You're doing what now? Hope asks, eyebrows raised as she looks over the sheet music. I explain my plan, watching as her expression shifts from skepticism to understanding. Oh, Dylan, she sighs. You've really got it bad, don't you? I feel my cheeks heat up. This isn't about me. It's about helping Ella get her confidence back. Hope gives me a look that clearly says she's not buying it, but she doesn't argue. Alright, let's hear it then. We run through the song a few times, Hope's alto not quite matching Ella's, but close enough for practice. As we sing, I can't help but imagine how it will sound with Ella. The way our voices will blend, the look on her face when she realizes what I've done. Earth to Dylan, Hope's voice breaks through my daydream. You missed your cue. Sorry, I mutter, shaking my head to clear it. Let's take it from the top. We're halfway through another run-through when I hear a gasp from the doorway. I spin around to see Ella standing there, her eyes wide as they dart between me and Hope. Ella! I exclaim, my voice embarrassingly high. What are you doing here? She blinks, her expression unreadable. I saw the light and thought I'd say hello. The door was unlocked. I didn't realize. Her voice trails off, and I suddenly realize how this must look. Me, singing a romantic duet with Hope, after spending weeks pretending to be Ella's boyfriend. Ella, it's not what you think. No, it's fine, she says, already backing away. I didn't mean to interrupt. Before I can say another word, she's gone, the door closing behind her with a soft click. Well, Hope says after a moment of stunned silence. That could have gone better. I groan, sinking onto my chair and burying my face in my hands. This is a disaster. She probably thinks I'm cheating on her in our fake relationship. Hope sits beside me, patting my shoulder sympathetically. Look on the bright side. At least you know she cares enough to be upset about it. I lift my head to glare at her. Not helpful, Hope. She shrugs. Just calling it like I see it. Now, are you going to sit here feeling sorry for yourself, or are you going to go after her and explain? I hesitate, torn between the urge to chase after Ella and the need to keep the surprise intact. I can't tell her about the concert. It'll ruin everything. So don't tell her about the concert, Hope says, as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. Tell her. I don't know, tell her we were practicing for my school's faculty talent show or something. I blink at her. That's actually not a bad idea. Hope rolls her eyes. Don't sound so surprised. Go, before she has too much time to overthink things. I jump to my feet, grabbing my jacket. Thanks, Hope. I owe you one. You owe me several, she says as we head for the door. And Dylan? I pause, looking back at her. Good luck, she says softly. And for what it's worth, I think this plan of yours might just work. I nod, offering her a small smile before I step out into the cold evening air and lock up behind me. Jogging down the street in the direction Ella went, my mind races. How am I going to explain this without giving away the surprise? And why did Ella look so hurt when she saw me singing with Hope? Despite the mess I've made, I feel a glimmer of hope. Because if Ella was upset about seeing me with another woman, maybe her feelings aren't so fake after all. I find Ella sitting on a bench at the end of the pier, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as she stares out across the ocean. The sight of her, looking small and vulnerable against the vast expanse of water, makes my heart ache. Hey, I say softly, approaching slowly. Mind if I join you? Ella glances up at me, her expression guarded. Free country, she mumbles, scooting over slightly. I sit down, leaving a respectable distance between us. For a moment, we just sit in silence, the rhythmic sound of waves filling the air. So, I finally say, I guess I owe you an explanation. Ella shrugs, still not looking at me. You don't owe me anything, Dylan. We're not really dating, remember? Her words sting more than I care to admit. Maybe not, but you're still my best friend. And I don't want you thinking whatever it is you're thinking right now. That gets her attention. She turns to face me, her eyes searching mine. Okay, then explain. I take a deep breath. Hope and I weren't, it's not what you think. She's married, for one thing. To Michael Erickson, you remember him from high school? They've been together for years. Ella's eyes widen slightly. Oh. I didn't know that. Yeah, well, you've been away for a while, I say gently, deciding then and there that I can't lie to her. Anyway, we were practicing for something. Look, the truth is, I was planning a surprise for you. A surprise? Ella says, looking confused. I nod, deciding to just go for it. I signed us up to perform a duet at the town's Christmas concert. I thought it might be fun. Like old times. Ella's mouth drops open slightly. You did what? I know, I say quickly, holding up my hands. It was presumptuous of me. If you don't want to do it, I totally understand. I can call Mrs. Abernathy Ann. No. Ella interrupts, surprising me. I'm not saying yes, exactly. But why? Why did you do this? I hesitate, trying to find the right words. Because I miss singing with you, I say softly. And because I thought maybe you missed it too. Ella's expression softens. Dylan. You don't have to decide right now, I assure her. Just think about it. Please? She's quiet for a long moment, her gaze drifting back to the ocean. Finally, she nods. Okay. I'll think about it. Relief washes over me. It's not a yes, but it's not a no either. I'll take it. 2 days later, I'm closing up the music store when I hear a knock on the door. I look up to see Ella peering in through the glass, a hesitant smile on her face. My heart leaps as I hurry to let her in. Hey, I say, probably grinning like an idiot. What brings you by? Ella takes a deep breath. I've been thinking about your offer. The duet. I nod, trying not to look too eager. And I think I want to do it, she says, a mix of excitement and nervousness in her voice. Really? I can't keep the joy out of my voice. That's great, Elle. You won't regret it, I promise. She laughs, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Let's see if you still feel that way after you hear how rusty I am. It's been a while since I've performed. Nonsense, I say, leading her to the back room where we used to practice as teenagers. You could never be rusty. It's like riding a bike, you never forget. We spend the next hour running through scales and warm-up exercises, our voices blending together just like they used to. As we practice, we fall into easy conversation, sharing stories about our musical journeys. Remember when we tried to write our own song for the talent show? Ella giggles, shaking her head at the memory. I groan dramatically. Don't remind me. What was it called again? Beach Town Blues? Coastal Heart, Ella corrects, still laughing. It was terrible. Hey, speak for yourself, I tease. I thought my part was pretty good. As our laughter dies down, I notice a flicker of sadness cross Ella's face. Elle? You okay? She sighs, her fingers idly plucking at guitar strings. Yeah, just thinking about New York, I guess. How different things turned out from what I imagined. I set my guitar aside, giving her my full attention. Want to talk about it? Ella hesitates, then nods. It was harder than I expected. The competition, the constant rejection. I started to doubt myself, you know? Wonder if I was good enough. My heart aches for her. Ella, look at me, I say gently. She meets my eyes, and I'm struck by the vulnerability I see there. You are more than good enough. You're incredible. New York wasn't ready for you yet. A small smile tugs at her lips. You really believe that? With every fiber of my being, I say, meaning every word. Your time will come, Elle. I know it will. She looks at me for a long moment, something soft and warm in her gaze. Then, without warning, she leans forward and hugs me tightly. I freeze for a second, surprised, before wrapping my arms around her. We stay like that for a while, the silence filled with unspoken words and emotions. When we finally pull apart, there's a new energy between us. We dive back into rehearsing with renewed enthusiasm, our voices intertwining in perfect harmony. As we sing, I keep stealing glances at Ella. The way her eyes light up when she hits a difficult note, the slight furrow of concentration between her brows, the pure joy radiating from her as she loses herself in the music. It's breathtaking. And that's when it hits me, with the force of a tidal wave. I'm falling in love with her. Not the childhood crush or the lingering what-ifs, but real, deep, terrifying love. The realization nearly makes me miss a note. I recover quickly, but my mind is reeling. This wasn't supposed to happen. We're friends, best friends. This fake relationship was supposed to help me get over her, not fall harder. As we finish the song, Ella beams at me, her eyes shining. That was amazing, she says breathlessly. I'd forgotten how good we sound together. I manage a smile, trying to ignore the way my heart is racing. Yeah, pretty great, I agree, my voice oddly hoarse. Ella doesn't seem to notice my internal crisis. She starts chattering excitedly about ideas for our performance, and I nod along, only half listening. Because I'm facing a terrifying question. How am I supposed to keep pretending when every part of me wants this to be real?
Chapter 5. Ella. I stand in front of my childhood bedroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. My hair, usually pulled back in a messy ponytail, falls in soft waves around my shoulders. The emerald green dress I'm wearing, borrowed from Jenna, hugs my curves in a way that makes me feel both beautiful and exposed. You look amazing, Jenna says, appearing behind me in the reflection. She's smiling, a hint of pride in her eyes as she adjusts a stray lock of my hair. Thanks. I smooth down the front of the dress for the 100th time. I'm not sure about the shoes, though. What if I trip on stage? Jenna laughs, squeezing my shoulders reassuringly. You won't. And even if you did, Dylan would catch you. I feel a flutter in my stomach that has nothing to do with pre-performance jitters. These past few weeks, rehearsing for the Christmas concert, have been special. I struggle to wrap my head around the emotions swirling inside me. I turn away from the mirror, sinking onto the edge of my bed. What if nobody shows up? Or worse, what if they do and they hate it? It wouldn't be the first time. Ella, Jenna says, sitting next to me, you're going to be fantastic. I heard you practicing yesterday. You sound great, and the two of you will be incredible together. A smile tugs at my lips despite my nervousness. We do sound pretty good, don't we? More than good, Jenna insists. I haven't seen you this excited about music in a long time. She's right. Somewhere between the late-night rehearsals, the shared laughter over flubbed lyrics, and Dylan's unwavering encouragement, I've rediscovered my love for performing. It's like a part of me that had been dimmed for years has suddenly brightened, filling me with a joy I'd almost forgotten existed. I guess I needed a little push, I say. New York was tough. The venues I managed to book were often half empty, and most nights I was singing to more wait staff than actual audience members. Jenna's expression softens. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. I shrug, trying to downplay the ache that still lingers when I think about those disappointing nights. It wasn't all bad. But between the lackluster gigs and having to juggle temp jobs and waiting tables just to make rent, I guess I started to lose sight of why I loved music in the first place. And now? Jenna asks. A smile spreads across my face. Now it feels like I've found that spark again. And a lot of that is thanks to Dylan. He's been amazing through all of this. He really has, hasn't he? You know, I always thought you two would end up together, my sister says. I feel heat rise to my cheeks. Jenna. I'm serious. She ignores my half-hearted protest. Even when we were kids, there was always something special between you and Dylan. The way he looks at you. It's like you're the only person in the room. Her words send a shiver down my spine. I've noticed it too. The way Dylan's eyes light up when he sees me, how his hand always seems to find mine when we're walking together, the soft smile he reserves just for me. And if I'm being honest with myself, I've started looking at him differently too. I don't know, I say, trying to keep my voice light. We've been friends for so long. Jenna raises an eyebrow. Sometimes the best relationships start as friendships. Look how happy you've been since you got together. I haven't seen you smile this much in years. I open my mouth to respond, but the words catch in my throat. Because she's right. I have been happier these past few weeks than I can remember being in a long time. But it's not because of our fake relationship. It's because of Dylan himself. The realization hits me like a tidal wave. The butterflies in my stomach when he smiles at me. The way my skin tingles when he casually touches me. The fact that he's the first person I want to talk to when something good happens, and the only one I want to comfort me when things go wrong. Ella? Jenna's voice breaks through my internal crisis. You okay? You look a little pale. I blink, forcing a smile. Nerves. Jenna doesn't look entirely convinced, but she nods. Well, let's finish getting you ready. Can't have Palmar Island's newest power couple being late for their big debut. While she fusses with my hair and makeup, I try to sort through the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. How did this happen? When did my best friend, the guy I've known practically my whole life, become more? I think back to our rehearsals, the way Dylan would patiently work through difficult passages with me, his encouragement never wavering. The late-night conversations we'd have after practice, sharing our hopes and fears. The way he believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. And it wasn't just about the music. It was the little things. The way he'd bring me my favorite coffee from the roasted bean before rehearsals. How he'd make me laugh with terrible puns when I was feeling stressed. The gentle way he'd tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch lingering just a moment longer than necessary. Earth to Ella, Jenna says, waving a hand in front of my face. Where'd you go just now? I shake my head, trying to clear my thoughts. Nowhere. Thinking about the performance. Jenna looks at me and shakes her head. Well, stop thinking and start moving. We need to leave in 5 minutes if we're going to make it on time. She walks out the door, motioning for me to follow. My mind is reeling while I gather my things. What am I supposed to do with these feelings? Dylan and I are supposed to be pretending. This was all supposed to be an act. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like pretend. At least for me. Ella, come on. Jenna calls from downstairs. Dylan's here to pick us up. My heart does a little flip. I take one last look in the mirror, taking a deep breath to steady myself. You can do this, I whisper to my reflection. Just get through the performance. Figure out the rest later. As I head downstairs, I hear Dylan's voice drifting up from the living room. He's laughing at something my dad said, the sound warm and familiar. It's a sound I've heard 1,000 times before, but now it sends a shiver down my spine. I pause at the top of the stairs, suddenly nervous in a way that has nothing to do with the upcoming performance. Because I'm about to face Dylan for the first time since realizing that my feelings for him have grown far beyond friendship. And I have no idea what I'm going to do about it. My heart pounds in my chest as Dylan and I step onto the stage. The auditorium is packed, familiar faces blurring together under the bright lights. For a moment, panic threatens to overwhelm me. What if I forget the words? What if my voice cracks? What if? Dylan's hand finds mine, giving it a gentle squeeze. I look up to meet his eyes, and the world stills. He smiles, that soft, reassuring smile that's become so familiar these past few weeks, and I can breathe again. Ready, he asks. I nod, returning his smile. Ready? The opening notes of the prayer fill the air, and everything else fades away. It's just me, Dylan, and the music. Our voices blend together, rising and falling in perfect harmony. As we sing, I feel something shift inside me. The nerves, the doubt, the lingering insecurities from my time in New York melt away. They are replaced by a sense of pure joy. This is why I fell in love with music in the first place, this feeling of connection, of creating something beautiful that touches people's hearts. I sneak a glance at Dylan as we move into the chorus. His eyes are closed, lost in the music, but there's a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He looks radiant, happy in a way I've never seen before. And knowing that I'm part of that happiness makes my heart swell. As we reach the final crescendo, our voices soaring together, I feel a rush of emotion so strong it almost takes my breath away. In this moment, everything feels right. Everything feels possible. The last note fades away, and for a heartbeat, there's silence. Then the audience erupts into applause. I blink, almost surprised that we're not alone. Dylan turns to me, his face lit up with joy. Without thinking, I throw my arms around him, laughing as he spins me around right there on stage. We did it. I say as he sets me down. Dylan, that was amazing, he finishes, his eyes shining. You were amazing, Elle. The intensity of his gaze makes my breath catch. For a moment, I forget where we are, lost in the warmth of his eyes and the feeling of his arms around me. A voice over the microphone breaks the spell, thanking us for our performance. We make our way off stage, hand in hand, to be immediately surrounded by well-wishers. Ella, honey, that was beautiful. Mom pulls me into a hug. You've still got it, kiddo, Dad adds, his gruff voice thick with emotion. Even Jenna and Chandler are there, offering congratulations. But it all feels distant, muted. Because all I can focus on is the warmth of Dylan's hand in mine, the way he hasn't left my side once since we stepped off stage. We make our way to the reception area, accepting compliments and fielding questions about our relationship. It's strange how natural it feels to play the part of Dylan's girlfriend. I'm going to grab us some drinks, Dylan says, squeezing my hand before disappearing into the crowd. I watch him go, a mix of emotions swirling in my chest. Pride at our performance, joy at rediscovering my love for music, and something else. Something deeper and more terrifying. Quite a performance, a voice says behind me. I turn to see Mrs. Peterson, my old music teacher, smiling warmly. You and Dylan have always had something special when you sing together. But tonight, it was more than just the music, wasn't it? I feel heat rise to my cheeks. We. Mrs. Peterson's smile widens. It's okay, dear. Love has a way of shining through, especially in music. Before I can respond, she pats my arm and moves on, leaving me stunned. Hey, you okay? Dylan's voice breaks through my thoughts. He's back, holding 2 glasses of champagne. I nod, taking the offered glass.
Yeah.
Processing, I guess. It still doesn't feel real. I know what you mean, he says softly. Then he grins, nodding upwards. Look where we've ended up. I follow his gaze to see a sprig of mistletoe hanging above us. My heart skips a beat. Well, Dylan says, his voice light. We can't break tradition, can we? I swallow hard, looking up at him. I guess not. He sets his glass down, then gently takes mine and does the same. His hands come up to cup my face, so tender it makes my heart ache. Ella, he whispers, and then his lips are on mine. The world around us stops. This isn't like the quick pecks we've shared for show. This is soft and sweet and achingly real. I melt into him, my hands finding their way to his chest. When we finally part, I'm breathless. Dylan's looking at me with an expression I can't quite read, a mix of wonder and fear and something that looks a lot like love. Wow. It's the best my muddled mind can come up with. Dylan laughs softly, his thumb brushing my cheek.
Yeah.
Wow. We stand there for a moment, neither of us quite sure what to say. Because that kiss wasn't for show. It wasn't fake. The spell is broken by someone calling Dylan's name. He turns, dropping his hands from my face, and I immediately miss his warmth. I should. He gestures vaguely toward the voice. Of course, I nod. Go ahead. As he walks away, I'm left reeling. What just happened? More importantly, what do I do now? Because I'm pretty sure I'm in love with my best friend. And I have no idea if he feels the same way, or if this is all still part of the act for him. I watch Dylan across the room, laughing and chatting with some of our old classmates. He looks up, catching my eye, and smiles that soft smile that's become so dear to me. Right now, I want nothing more than to march over there and tell him how I feel. To lay it all out. How he's reignited my passion for music, how he makes me feel safe and understood, how I think I've been falling for him since we were kids and just never realized it until now. But what if I'm reading this all wrong? What if, for Dylan, this is still just an elaborate act? The thought of losing him, of ruining our friendship, terrifies me more than any stage fright ever could. So I stay where I am, sipping my drink and trying to calm the storm in my heart. Because right now, I don't know what's scarier, the thought of telling Dylan how I feel, or the thought of never telling him and always wondering what might have been.
Chapter 6. Dylan. I flipped the closed sign on the door of Thorne's Music, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and terror. It's only 3 p.m. Any other day, I'd be open for at least another 4 hours. But today isn't usual. Today, I'm about to risk everything. Are you sure about this, dear? Miss Doris asks as she bustles in, arms laden with bags of decorations. Her eyes twinkle with a mix of concern and mischief. I take a deep breath, nodding. I have to do this, Miss Doris. I can't keep pretending. She pats my cheek affectionately. Well then, let's make this place shine brighter than the Star of Bethlehem. For the next hour, we transform the store. Twinkling lights are strung from the ceiling, creating a canopy of stars. Garlands of pine and holly adorn the walls, filling the air with the scent of Christmas. And mistletoe, lots of mistletoe, hangs strategically throughout the space. As I work, my mind wanders back to that Christmas when Ella and I were 16. We'd been decorating this very store, helping my dad prepare for the holiday rush. Ella had been perched precariously on a ladder, hanging lights, when she lost her balance. I caught her, our faces inches apart, both of us breathless from the near fall and our sudden proximity. That was the moment I first realized I was in love with her. We'd been friends for years, but suddenly, looking into her eyes, I saw my whole world. Earth to Dylan, Miss Doris's voice breaks through my reverie. Where'd you go just now? I feel heat rise to my cheeks. Memories. Miss Doris smiles knowingly. Ah, young love. It's a beautiful thing. She pauses in her work, fixing me with a serious look. Are you sure about this, Dylan? You've been carrying a torch for that girl for a long time. I nod, my resolve strengthening. I am. I can't keep pretending, Miss Doris. These past few weeks, pretending to be Ella's boyfriend, it's been amazing and torture all at once. Because I want it to be real. I want it more than I've ever wanted anything. And if she doesn't feel the same way? Miss Doris asks gently. The question sends a jolt of fear through me, but I push it aside. Then at least I'll know. I'd rather take the risk than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. Miss Doris nods approvingly. That's my boy. Now, let's finish up here. You've got a heart to win. As we put the finishing touches on the decorations, I reflect on the journey that's brought me to this point. Ella and I have been through so much together: childhood adventures, teenage heartbreaks, the pain of separation when she moved to New York. And now this elaborate charade that's somehow become more real than anything else in my life. I think about all the moments over the past few weeks that have made me fall even deeper in love with her. The way her eyes light up when she nails a difficult part of a song. Her belly laugh when I tell a particularly terrible joke. The quiet vulnerability in her voice when she talked about her struggles in New York. And then there was that kiss under the mistletoe at the concert reception. For a moment, I let myself believe it was real. The softness of her lips, the way she melted into me. It felt like coming home. Miss Doris steps back to admire our handiwork. If this doesn't sweep her off her feet, nothing will. I look around, a lump forming in my throat. The store has been transformed into a winter wonderland, twinkling lights reflecting off the polished surfaces of guitars and pianos. It's magical, romantic, and terrifying. Thank you, Miss Doris. I pull the older woman into a hug. I couldn't have done this without you. She pats my back. Oh, pish posh. You did all the hard work, carrying that torch all these years. I just helped hang some lights. She pulls back, her eyes suspiciously moist. Now, you practice what you're going to say. I'll be at my place if you need anything. As Miss Doris leaves, I'm struck by a wave of nerves. What am I going to say? How do you tell your best friend that you're in love with her and have been for years? I pace the length of the store, running my hands through my hair. Ella, I start, speaking to an imaginary audience of instruments. I know this whole thing started as pretend, but for me, it's always been real. I shake my head and try again. Elle, you're my best friend. You always have been. But somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you. And I think maybe you might feel something too? Still doesn't feel right. I stop in front of the upright piano where Ella first learned to play. Running my fingers over the keys, I'm flooded with memories. Ella, her tongue poking out in concentration as she struggled through chopsticks. The two of us, giggling as we tried to play duets, our hands tangling on the keys. Her face, lit up with joy, the first time she mastered a difficult piece. I know exactly what I want to say. I grab my old guitar and start to strum. The melody of The Prayer fills the air, and I close my eyes, letting the music wash over me. Ella, I say softly, imagining her standing in front of me. Music has always been a huge part of my life. But you're the melody I can't get out of my head. The harmony that makes everything better. I love you, Elle. Not as a friend, not as a pretend boyfriend, but as a man who wants to spend the rest of his life making music with you. For real this time. I open my eyes, my heart pounding. It's not perfect, but it's honest. It's real. And I hope it's enough. The bell over the door chimes, making me jump. For a wild moment, I think it might be Ella, but it's just Miss Doris, peeking her head in. I forgot my purse, she says, walking across the room to grab it. How's it going? I take a deep breath, setting my guitar aside. I think I'm ready. Miss Doris beams at me. Good. I've called Ella and told her you needed to see her about something important. She should be here any minute. My heart leaps into my throat. You what? Miss Doris, I'm not. No more stalling, she says firmly. You've waited long enough, Dylan Thorne. It's time. Before I can protest further, she's gone, the bell jingling in her wake. I'm left alone in the twinkling, pine-scented store, my palms sweating, my heart racing. In a few minutes, Ella will walk through that door, and everything will change. One way or another, nothing will ever be the same after tonight. I take another deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. I can do this. I have to do this. Because a life without Ella, well, that's not a life I want to imagine. A soft knock on the door sends my heart racing. I look up and see her on the other side of the glass. This is it. The moment of truth. I take a deep breath, wiping my sweaty palms on my jeans before reaching for the doorknob. Ella stands there, snowflakes melting in her hair, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Hi. My voice is embarrassingly hoarse. I clear my throat and try again. Thanks for coming. Ella smiles. Of course. Miss Doris said it was important. Is everything okay? I nod, stepping aside to let her in. Everything's fine. Great, actually. I wanted to show you something. I watch her as she steps into the store. Her eyes widen as she takes in the transformation, her lips parting in surprise. She moves further into the space, her gaze darting from the twinkling lights to the garlands to the mistletoe hanging overhead. Dylan, she breathes, turning in a slow circle. What is all this? I see the wonder in her eyes, the way they sparkle in the soft glow of the lights. She reaches out to touch a nearby garland, her fingers gently brushing the pine needles. It's beautiful, she says softly, her voice filled with awe. I take a step closer, my heart pounding. I wanted to recreate a memory. Do you remember that Christmas when we were 16? Ella's eyes snap to mine, recognition dawning. I lead her to the center of the store, where I've set up the old ladder with fairy lights draped over it, a sprig of mistletoe hanging just above. Her breath catches as she sees it. The ladder, she says. I almost fell. I nod, watching as emotions play across her face, surprise, nostalgia, and something else I'm afraid to name. You caught me, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. She looks up at me, her eyes searching mine. Dylan, what's going on? This is it. No turning back now. I take a deep breath and plunge forward. That moment, when I caught you, was when I realized I was in love with you, Elle. And I've been in love with you ever since. I watch as her eyes widen, her lips parting in shock. She takes a small step back, and for a moment, I'm terrified I've made a huge mistake. But then I see it, the glimmer of hope in her eyes, the slight tremble of her lower lip. She's not running away. She's waiting. I gather my courage. Ella, I need to tell you something. I've been in love with you since we were 16. Maybe even before that. What? But, all this time, why didn't you say anything? She asks. I run a hand through my hair, a nervous habit I've never been able to shake. At first, I was afraid of ruining our friendship. Then you were with Chandler, and by the time that ended, you were in New York. It never seemed like the right time. Ella takes a small step closer, her eyes searching mine. And now? Now, I say, my heart pounding, I can't keep pretending. These past few weeks, pretending to be your boyfriend has been amazing and torture all at once. Because I want it to be real, Elle. I want it more than I've ever wanted anything. I watch as understanding dawns in her eyes, followed by a soft wonder that makes my heart soar. I love you, Ella Langford, I say, my voice thick with emotion. Not as a friend, not as a pretend boyfriend, but as the man who wants to spend the rest of his life making music with you. For real this time. Tears are glistening in Ella's eyes, but she's smiling, a trembling, hopeful smile that takes my breath away. Dylan, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say. I take her hands in mine, marveling at how perfectly they fit together. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens next, But I don't get to finish that thought, because suddenly Ella's arms are around my neck and she's kissing me. It's nothing like our staged kisses or even the mistletoe kiss at the concert. This is real and passionate and full of years of pent-up emotion. When we finally break apart, we're both breathless. I love you too, she says. I think I have for a long time. I was just too scared to admit it, even to myself. Joy bubbles up inside me, threatening to overflow. I can't stop the grin that spreads across my face. Really? You're not just saying that because of all the mistletoe, are you? Ella laughs, swatting my arm playfully. No, you goof. Although I have to admit, the decorations are a nice touch. I pull her close, reveling in the feeling of her in my arms. No pretense, no act. Just us. I may have had some help from Miss Doris, I admit. Remind me to thank her, Ella murmurs, resting her head on my chest. We stand there for a while, swaying slightly to music only we can hear. It feels surreal, like a dream I'm afraid to wake up from. So, I say finally, what happens now? Ella pulls back slightly to look at me. What do you mean? I shrug, trying to keep my tone light despite the worry gnawing at me. Well, you'll be heading back to New York soon, right? To give your music career another shot? To my surprise, Ella shakes her head. Actually, I've been thinking about that. Being back here, singing with you, it's made me realize something. I don't need New York to make music. I can do that anywhere. My heart leaps at her words. You mean? I mean that I'm thinking of staying. Maybe I could start something here. Play some gigs, maybe even start a small production company. There's so much talent on this island that never gets a chance to shine. The idea takes root in my mind, growing and blossoming with possibility. We could use the store, I say, excitement building. Turn the back room into a small recording studio. Offer lessons, host open mic nights. Ella's eyes light up. Yes. And we could organize concerts, maybe even an open mic night at the coffee shop. Put Palmar Island on the map as a destination for up-and-coming artists. I laugh, lifting her and spinning her around. Elle, that's brilliant. You're brilliant. As I set her down, she looks up at me, her expression turning serious. Are you sure about this, Dylan? About us? It's a big change. I cup her face in my hands, meeting her gaze steadily. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, Ella. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. She smiles, leaning into my touch. Together. I like the sound of that. I glance up at the mistletoe hanging above us, then back at Ella with a grin. You know, I think we need to make up for lost time. Ella laughs, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Well, we can't break tradition, can we? As our lips meet again, I'm filled with a sense of rightness. This is where I belong. Where we belong. Together. When we finally part, Ella's cheeks are flushed, her eyes bright. So, Mr. Thorne, she says, a teasing lilt to her voice, are you going to ask me out on a real date, or do I have to do everything myself? I chuckle, taking her hand and pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Ella Langford, would you do me the honor of going on a date with me? A real one this time, no pretending. She pretends to consider it, tapping her chin thoughtfully. I don't know. I might need some convincing. What did you have in mind? I grin, already forming a plan. How about dinner at the brick oven? We can grab a cozy corner booth, share a pizza, and talk about all the time we've wasted not being together. Then, if you're up for it, we could take a walk through town. I know it's cold, but the Christmas lights are still up, and it's beautiful at night. Maybe we could even bring our guitars and work on some new songs by the pier. Ella's eyes soften. That sounds perfect. although we might want to save the outdoor guitar playing for warmer weather. I don't think my fingers could handle it in this cold. I chuckle, pulling her closer. Fair point. How about we come back here after our walk? We could work on some music in the warmth of the store. Who knows, maybe we'll even come up with a plan to start an open mic night at the Roasted Bean. We'll call it step 1 of turning Palmar Island into the new hot spot for recording artists. I love it, Ella says, her smile radiant. A perfect first real date, complete with music and future planning. You really know the way to a girl's heart, Dylan Thorne. As we stand there, surrounded by twinkling lights and the promise of a future together, I'm filled with an overwhelming sense of gratitude. For Miss Doris's meddling, for Ella's return to Palmar Island, for the crazy fake dating scheme that led us here. But mostly, I'm grateful for the love that's been growing between us all these years. A love that, like the best music, only gets better with time. Merry Christmas, Elle, I whisper, brushing a soft kiss against her temple. She snuggles closer, her arms tightening around me. Merry Christmas, Dylan. Here's to many more, together.
Epilogue. Ella. Palmar Island, 1 year later. The air is crisp with the promise of snow as I stand backstage at the Palmar Island Christmas concert, my heart racing with a familiar mix of excitement and nerves. The town square outside is a winter wonderland, twinkling lights adorning every tree and lamppost, a massive Christmas tree standing proud in the center. Mistletoe hangs from strategic spots, a reminder of last year's life-changing moment. You ready for this? Dylan's warm voice in my ear sends a shiver down my spine that has nothing to do with the cold. I turn to face him, drinking in the sight of him in his crisp white shirt and forest green tie. His eyes are bright with excitement, a lock of hair falling rebelliously across his forehead. My heart swells with love. Ready as I'll ever be. I reach up to straighten his tie. Can you believe it's been a year since we stood here, pretending to be a couple? Dylan chuckles, catching my hand and pressing a kiss to my palm. Best fake relationship I've ever had. I laugh, the sound mingling with the muffled chorus of A Silent Night, drifting from the stage. Also the only fake relationship you've ever had, I hope. And the last, he says softly, his gaze intense. There's something in his eyes, an extra spark I can't explain. Before I can ponder it further, we're being ushered toward the stage. We step into the spotlight, and a familiar hush falls over the crowd. I scan the sea of faces, picking out our families, Miss Doris, and what seems like half the island's population. My nerves settle as Dylan's fingers intertwine with mine, grounding me. The opening notes of the prayer fill the air, and just like that, the world fades away. It's just me, Dylan, and the music. Our voices blend together, rising and falling in perfect harmony. As we sing, I'm transported back to last year, to the moment when music brought us together and love blossomed under the mistletoe. The final notes fade away, replaced by thunderous applause. I beam at Dylan, my heart full. This is what I've always dreamed of, in making music with the person I love most in the world. As the applause dies down, I give a small wave to the audience and turn to leave the stage. But Dylan's hand on my arm stops me. I look at him, confused, as he steps forward and takes the microphone. Thank you all, he says, his voice ringing out clear and strong. You know, this concert holds a special place in my heart. It was right here, 1 year ago, that something magical began. My breath catches as Dylan turns to face me, his eyes shining with emotion. Ella Langford has been my best friend for as long as I can remember. She's been my partner in crime, my musical other half, and for the past year, the love of my life. But tonight, I'm hoping she'll agree to be something more. The world seems to slow down as Dylan reaches into his pocket and drops to one knee. The audience gasps collectively, and I feel my heart stop. Elle, Dylan says, holding up a glittering ring, you've made this past year the happiest of my life. Will you make me the happiest man in the world by agreeing to marry me? For a moment, I'm frozen, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotion. Joy, love, surprise, they all crash over me at once. The crowd fades away, the lights dim, and all I can see is Dylan, looking up at me with hope and love shining in his eyes. Yes, I whisper, then louder, yes. Of course, yes. The audience erupts into cheers as Dylan slips the ring onto my finger. It's a delicate silver band with a small diamond flanked by 2 emeralds. It's perfect. It's us. Dylan stands, pulling me into his arms and spinning me around right there on stage. When he sets me down, we're both laughing and crying at the same time. I love you. I've never meant anything more. I love you too, Dylan says, his smile brighter than all the Christmas lights combined. He takes my hand, leading me to the front of the stage where a large sprig of mistletoe hangs. The symbolism isn't lost on me, this is where our journey began, where a fake kiss turned into something real. Dylan's lips meet mine, and the cheers of the crowd fade away. It's just us, sealing our promise of forever under the mistletoe. When we finally part, I'm vaguely aware of camera flashes going off. Miss Doris is wiping away tears in the front row, and my parents are hugging Dylan's mom. It's a perfect moment, one I know I'll cherish forever. After the concert, Dylan and I walk hand in hand through the town square. The air is filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon, Christmas carols drifting from nearby shops. I can't stop staring at the ring on my finger, still hardly believing this is real. So, Dylan says, squeezing my hand, "Future Mrs. Thorne, how does it feel?" I laugh, the sound full of joy. Like a dream. The best kind of dream. I pause, looking up at him. How long have you been planning this? Dylan grins sheepishly. Remember that day in August when I had to make an emergency trip to Myrtle Beach for guitar strings? My jaw drops. Dylan Thorne, you devious man. You've been sitting on this for 4 months? He shrugs, looking entirely too pleased with himself. What can I say? I wanted it to be perfect. And I had some help. At my questioning look, he adds, let's just say Miss Doris might have a future in event planning if she ever gets tired of baking. We laugh, and I'm struck by how far we've come since last Christmas. Back then, I was lost, unsure of my place in the world. Now, I'm more grounded than ever, with a thriving music school, a budding career as a songwriter, and the love of my life by my side. You know, I say as we pause by the Christmas tree, a year ago, I thought coming back to Palmar Island meant giving up on my dreams. I never imagined I'd find them here instead. Dylan pulls me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. I always knew you were destined for greatness, Elle. I'm just glad I get to be a part of it. As we continue our stroll, we pass the roasted bean. The open mic night sign in the window makes me smile. It had taken some convincing, but Mitch had finally agreed to let us host weekly events. Now, every Friday night, the cafe is packed with locals and tourists alike, all eager to showcase their talents. We should do something special for the open mic night after Christmas, I muse. Maybe a New Year's Eve showcase? Dylan's eyes light up. That's a great idea. We could feature some of our most promising students from the music school. I nod enthusiastically. The Palmar Island School of Music, our joint venture, had taken off beyond our wildest dreams. What started as a few guitar lessons in the back of Thorne's music had grown into a full-fledged school, offering classes in everything from piano to songwriting. I'm struck by a wave of gratitude so strong it nearly brings tears to my eyes. A year ago, I thought my dreams were dead. Now, they're not only alive but thriving in ways I never could have imagined. Dylan pulls me close, his forehead resting against mine. Merry Christmas, Elle, he whispers. I smile, my heart full to bursting. Merry Christmas, Dylan. Here's to many, many more, together. The warm summer sun bathes Palmar Island in a golden glow as I stand at the edge of the beach, running my hands over the full skirt of my white dress. The gentle crash of waves provides a soothing backdrop to the murmur of excited guests. Wildflowers in shades of yellow, purple, and white line the aisle, their sweet scent mingling with the salty sea air. I take a deep breath, clutching my bouquet of vibrant sunflowers. From where I stand, I can see Dylan at the altar, looking handsome and slightly nervous in his light linen suit. Our eyes meet, and his smile widens, instantly calming my nerves. The string quartet begins to play a soft, melodic version of the prayer, our song. My father holds out his arm, and as I take my first steps down the aisle, the warm sand between my toes grounds me. I see Miss Doris dabbing at her eyes in the front row, and my mom beaming with pride. But my gaze is drawn inexorably back to Dylan. When I reach him, he takes my hand, his touch sending a familiar thrill through me. "You look beautiful," he whispers, his voice full of awe. The officiant begins the ceremony, but I'm only half listening, lost in Dylan's eyes. When it's time for our vows, Dylan goes first, his voice strong and clear despite the emotion I can see shimmering in his eyes. "Ella," he begins, "from the moment I met you, you've been the music in my life. Every laugh, every tear, every shared silence, it's all been part of our perfect harmony. I promise to stand by you through every verse, chorus, and bridge of our life together. I love you, Elle, and I can't wait to see what beautiful melodies we create in the years to come." Tears blur my vision as I start my own vows. "Dylan, you've been my best friend, my partner, and my home for as long as I can remember. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and you've shown me that the greatest adventures can happen right where you are. I promise to love you through every high note and every rest, to harmonize with you in good times and in bad. You're the song in my heart, Dylan Thorne, and I'm so grateful we get to perform this duet called Life together." As we exchange rings, the metal warm from the sun, a sense of rightness settles over me. This is where I'm meant to be, with this man, on this island that's always been home. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher says, his voice carrying over the sound of the waves. "You may kiss the bride." Dylan's hands cup my face gently as he leans in. When our lips meet, it feels like our first real kiss all over again, full of love, promise, and a hint of magic. The crowd erupts into cheers, and I can hear the quartet strike up a joyful tune, but for a moment, it's just us, Dylan and Ella Thorne, starting our forever. We turn to face our friends and family, hand in hand, and I'm overwhelmed with joy and gratitude. The path that led us here wasn't always easy, but standing here now, with the man I love, surrounded by the people we care about most, I know every step was worth it. Dylan squeezes my hand, and I look up to see him grinning at me. "Ready for our next adventure, Mrs. Thorne?" he asks. I laugh, feeling lighter than air. "With you? Always." As we make our way back down the aisle, showered with flower petals and surrounded by love, I know that whatever comes next, we'll face it together, in perfect harmony. Bonus Epilogue. Ella. Palmar Island, 3 years later. The aroma of roasting chicken and herbs fills our cozy home as I put the finishing touches on dinner. Outside, a crisp wind blows in from the ocean. Christmas lights twinkle from the neighbors' houses, and our own tree stands proudly in the corner of the living room, adorned with a mix of store-bought and handmade ornaments. My hands shake slightly as I place the plates on the table. I've been planning this moment for days, ever since that second line turned pink and changed everything. Excitement bubbles up inside me, mingling with a hint of nerves. How will Dylan react? We've talked about having kids, of course, but always as a someday thing. Now someday is here. The front door opens, bringing with it a gust of cold air and the sound of Dylan stamping his boots. "Elle? You home?" "In the kitchen." I call back, smoothing my hands over my apron and taking a deep breath. Dylan appears in the doorway, his cheeks flushed from the cold, his hair standing up from the wind. His face lights up when he sees me, and my heart does a little flip. Even after 3 years of marriage, he still looks at me like I'm the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. "Something smells amazing," he says, crossing the room to plant a kiss on my cheek. "What's the occasion?" I shrug, aiming for nonchalance. Can't a girl cook a nice dinner for her husband just because? Dylan raises an eyebrow, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Sure, but you've got that look." "What look?" "The one that says you're up to something," he says, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Spill it, Langford. What are you planning?" I laugh, pushing him away playfully. "Nothing. Now go wash up. Dinner's almost ready." As Dylan heads upstairs, I reach into the drawer where I've hidden the tiny Christmas stocking. My fingers trace the embroidered baby thorn, and I have to blink back tears. We're going to be parents. The thought is equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. Dinner passes in a blur of casual conversation. Dylan tells me about his day at the music school, about a particularly promising young pianist he's been working with. I share stories from my songwriting session, carefully avoiding any mention of the slight nausea I'd battled all morning. As we finish our meal, my nerves return full force. This is it. Hey, I say, reaching across the table to take Dylan's hand. I have something for you. Dylan's eyebrows shoot up. A present? Christmas is still a few weeks away. I smile, my heart racing. This couldn't wait. Close your eyes. He obliges, a curious smile on his face. I retrieve the stocking from its hiding place and place it gently in his hands. Okay, I say softly. Open them. Dylan's eyes flutter open, focusing on the tiny stocking in his hands. For a moment, he just stares at it, uncomprehending. Then his eyes widen, darting from the stocking to my face and back again. Ella, he whispers. Are you? I nod, tears spilling down my cheeks. We're going to have a baby. The next thing I know, I'm swept up in Dylan's arms, his laughter mingling with my happy sobs. He spins me around the kitchen, holding me like he'll never let go. When he finally sets me down, his eyes are shining with unshed tears. A baby, he says in wonder, his hand coming to rest gently on my still flat stomach. Our baby. I cover his hand with mine, overwhelmed by the love I see in his eyes. Are you happy? I ask, though I already know the answer. Happy doesn't even begin to cover it, Dylan says, pulling me close. I'm ecstatic, terrified, overwhelmed. We're going to be parents. We spend the next hour, cuddled on the couch, talking about our future. Dylan wants to turn the spare room into a nursery, already planning a music-themed decor. I laugh at his enthusiasm, my heart so full it feels like it might burst. When should we tell everyone? Dylan asks, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm. I consider for a moment. What about at the Christmas gathering? Everyone will be there, and it seems fitting, doesn't it? A Christmas surprise. Dylan grins, pressing a kiss to my temple. Perfect. Just like you. As we sit there, wrapped in each other's arms with the Christmas tree twinkling in the background, I'm filled with a sense of contentment I've never known before. Our little family is growing, and I can't wait to see what the future holds. The Langford family home is a whirlwind of activity on Christmas Eve. The scent of Mom's famous cinnamon rolls mingles with the pine fragrance of the enormous Christmas tree dominating the living room. Laughter and snatches of conversation drift from every corner as our extended family mills about, exchanging hugs and catching up. Dylan and I sit on the love seat, his arm draped casually over my shoulders. To anyone else, we probably look like we always do, happy, in love. But I can feel the excited tension thrumming through Dylan's body, matching my own barely contained anticipation. When should we do it? Dylan whispers in my ear, nodding towards the carefully wrapped gift sitting innocuously under the tree. I glance around the room. Jenna and Chandler are animatedly discussing their recent trip to Europe with my cousin Amy. Mom and Aunt Sarah are arranging plates of cookies on the coffee table. Dad and Dylan's parents are engrossed in a conversation about the latest town council meeting. How about now? I suggest. Before we start opening presents? Dylan nods, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze before standing up. Everyone, he calls out, his voice cutting through the chatter. Ella and I have a special gift we'd like our parents to open early, if that's okay. All eyes turn to us, curiosity evident on every face. I feel a blush creeping up my neck as I retrieve the gift from under the tree. Here, Mom, Dad, I say, handing them the package. My voice shakes slightly, and I feel Dylan's steadying hand on my back. This is for both of you. Dylan hands a matching gift to his mother and father. Mom and Dad exchange a puzzled look before carefully unwrapping the gift. As the paper falls away, revealing the frame inside, I hold my breath. For a moment, there's silence as they stare at the ultrasound picture. Then Mom gasps, her hand flying to her mouth. Ella, she whispers, her eyes filling with tears. Is this? I nod, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Dad looks from the picture to me, his expression a mix of shock and dawning joy. We're going to be grandparents, he asks, his voice gruff with emotion. Surprise, Dylan says softly, his arm tightening around my waist. The room erupts into chaos. Jenna lets out a squeal that could probably be heard across the island, launching herself at me in a bone-crushing hug. I'm going to be an aunt, she says, bouncing up and down. Mom and Dad engulf us in a group hug, both of them crying openly now. I can feel Dad's tears on my cheek as he whispers, "My baby girl is having a baby." Dylan's parents are next, his mom already talking a mile a minute about knitting baby blankets and his dad clapping Dylan on the back so hard he stumbles. As the initial excitement dies down, we're bombarded with questions. When are you due? Do you know if it's a boy or a girl? Have you thought of names? We answer as best we can, sharing that I'm due in early July and that it's too early to know the gender. We haven't discussed names yet, but Dylan jokes that a melody could work for a girl or a boy. The rest of the evening passes in a blur of joy and celebration. The actual gift exchange is almost an afterthought, everyone more excited about the impending new addition to the family. As the night winds down, I find myself by the Christmas tree, absently touching the ornaments. So much has changed since last Christmas, and next year will be even more different. The thought is both thrilling and a little scary. Hey, Dylan's voice breaks through my reverie. You okay? I turn to see him standing under the mistletoe hanging in the doorway, a soft smile on his face. Never better, I say, moving to join him. Just thinking about how different things will be next Christmas. Dylan pulls me close, one hand coming to rest on my stomach. Different, but amazing, he says. I can't wait to see you as a mom, Elle. You're going to be incredible. I lean into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. We're going to be incredible, I say. This baby is so lucky to have you as a dad. Dylan tilts my chin up, his eyes shining with love. Merry Christmas, Mrs. Thorne, he murmurs. Merry Christmas, Mr. Thorne, I reply, smiling up at him. As our lips meet in a sweet kiss, I'm filled with an overwhelming sense of joy and gratitude. This wasn't the life I'd imagined for myself when I left for New York all those years ago, chasing dreams of stardom. But standing here, in the arms of the man I love, surrounded by family and with a new life growing inside me, I know without a doubt that this is better than any dream I could have had. The future stretches out before us, full of promise and new adventures. There will be challenges, of course, sleepless nights, diaper changes, the juggling act of parenthood and careers. But as I look into Dylan's eyes, I know we can handle anything as long as we're together. As we break apart, someone starts up the karaoke machine, a Thorne family tradition. Dylan's eyes light up with mischief. What do you say, Elle? One more duet before we call it a night? I laugh, letting him lead me towards the makeshift stage. Always, I say. After all, our best songs are yet to come. And as we launch into a slightly off-key but heartfelt rendition of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, I know that the melody of our lives is only going to get sweeter from here on out. This baby, this family we're creating, it's the most beautiful music we've ever made. The end. This has been Mistletoe Harmonies. Written by Susanne Ash. Copyright 2024 by Susanne Ash. Production copyright 2024 by Susanne Ash. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe if you want me to put more of my books on YouTube. Visit my website at www.susanneash.com for more of my books or find me on Amazon.